In this lesson, we are going to explain the roles of South Carolinians in the formation of their new state government and the national government after the American Revolution. To begin this lesson, it is important to understand that South Carolina formed an independent government prior to the first shots of the Revolution. And we probably know what this government is. Yes, this government was the General Committee of 99. Now, the General Committee of 99, when they met, it was called the General Meeting. In 1774, there was such one of these meetings, and at this meeting, several things were decided. One, the election of delegates to a provincial congress was decided. Now, this provincial congress, this would be the governing body of the entire group of colonies. It would be today as the Congress is today. This is not correct. This was before I understood this completely. But the provincial congress, of course, would be the national congress. This was the Congress of the 13 colonies. And just like to the First Continental Congress, South Carolina had to decide who to send to this meeting. And it was decided that the delegates, of course, would, continuing the trend that had begun, be disproportionately from the Low Country. Now, the jobs of the Provincial Congress, which was the National Congress, I believe it was based in Philadelphia, maybe New York, was to, of course, raise an army. The army that the Provincial Congress raised was called the Continental Army. And it was to issue currency, and it created a committee to enforce what was the decision after the Intolerable Acts that was made by the First Continental Congress to enforce non-importation and non-exportation. Now, the next part of the lesson has to do with the General Committee of 99 and its position in the Carolinas. Now, once again, the General Committee of 99 was from Charlestown, or was in Charlestown. And when they met, it was called the General Meeting. Now, the General Committee of 99 would be the actual government in South Carolina at the time. Who was supposed to be the government was the royal governor. Remember, that's the king's man. But South Carolina is cutting ties with the king in Britain. Or they also just want to show that they're not going to listen to them until they start to give Carolina respect or lower the taxes. So keep in mind, all this is occurring before the first shots of the revolution. And to replace the royal governor, of course, was the General Committee of 99. So the royal governor wasn't being listened to. No one listened to the royal governor. Instead, the actual government, the people that they listened to, was the General Committee of 99. Now, when such a thing occurs where you have an actual government that no one's listening to, the French have come up with two words or two series of words that would express this. Now, the government by law that people are not necessarily listening to is called the de jure government. In our country, the de jure government is often the government people listen to. The true government is also the government in power. However, there are often times that the government by law is not the actual government. And when you have a situation like this, or a change of governments, the French have a word, and the word is the de facto government, which means the government in fact. This often happens in less stable countries. You have the government by law, but no one listens to them. The real government is like a gang, or these criminals of some sort that control the country, which often happen in many countries in Africa and South America. You have the de facto government. France, it's coincidental that France had come up with the word because it's one of the best examples, because during the French Revolution, you had the king, but no one listened to the king. They were listening to the people and whatever government they formed. I can't quite remember them right now. But when the actual government differs from the government by law, then it's called the de facto government. Well, South Carolina was an example of this place. You had the government by law, which was the royal governor, but the actual government, the de facto government, the ones that were really controlling things, was the General Committee of 99. Again, you run into this scenario sometimes in parts of a city where the police are too scared to go and you have a gang that pretty much controls everything. They would be an example of the de facto government there. You run into this in some countries where drug production is a big problem. The people producing the drugs have paid off all the government officials, and they actually are the true government. So, this is an advanced term, once again in the standards, but the de facto government or actual government was the General Committee of 99 in South Carolina prior to the Revolution. Now, all of this has been said. South Carolina formed an independent government before the first shots of the Revolution. And if you remember, it was most likely formed after the passage of the Intolerable Acts, because the first shots of the Revolution occurred after the First Continental Congress, which were in response to the Intolerable Acts, which, of course, I've already told you, the General Committee of 99 consisted of 69 planters, 15 merchants, and 15 artisans. Once again, and exhibiting the disproportionate amount of elite from the Low Country. The Committee of 99 became the de facto government. I tried to just explain this very well to you, which is basically saying even though the royal governor was still in Charleston, most citizens obeyed the Committee of 99. In November of 1774, the General Meeting, which would be a meeting of the General Committee of 99, they called for the election of delegates to a provincial congress. This provincial congress would be the national government, the national legislature, in the time where things are deteriorating between Great Britain. The Low Country had a majority of the representation in the provincial congress, as has been the trend with all of the legislatures in Carolina. The provincial congress did the following. They raised an army. We've already talked a great deal about the Continental Army and the various patriot forces. Well, the one that was under the national control, the control of the provincial congress, was the Continental Army. They also issued currency and created a committee to enforce non-importation, non-exportation. They also commissioned the writing of a constitution. Now, as has said before, not everyone in South Carolina, just like all the other colonies, supported the revolution or revolutionary ideas. Even though this is before the revolution theoretically, not everyone was happy with the National Congress, the Provincial Congress, or agreed with the decision to cut off trade with Great Britain through non-importation, non-exportation. And this was especially true of the backcountry people. As had been said in previous lessons, the backcountry people never really felt that these issues pertained to them due to the fact that they made their living not through exporting of goods, but through living off the land. It became evident to the Patriots that the backcountry and their lack of allegiance to the Patriot cause could cause a problem. So, early in the war, the provincial government, which I believe was the government in Charlestown, which would be the General Committee of 99. In fact, let's just go ahead and put that down, because this is a confusing section. They sent a delegation to the backcountry to talk to these backcountry leaders, and they asked them the following. Said, hey, we know you won't join us, but certainly don't join the British. So you don't have to fight for us, but don't join the British. Well, the backcountry people said, okay, but we're not joining you either. Said, we understand that. So, as is often done between two parties, they said, what do they usually agree on if two sides are going to formally agree on something? Yes, they have a treaty. Said, fine, treaty. And the backcountry people said, sure. Now, this meeting took place in a city in backcountry South Carolina. And yes, the city's name was 96. So, as you can imagine, as all other treaties are, we got the Treaty of 96. Just like you had the Treaty of Versailles and the Treaty of Paris, and there was a second Treaty of Paris. Well, what the Treaty of 96 said was that the backcountry will remain neutral in the fight with Great Britain. Now, however, later it became evident that backcountry loyalists were aiding British and forming loyalist militias, so the Provincial Congress sends a force to defeat and silence them. Okay, as was said before, the backcountry people were not happy with the provincial government or agreed with non-importation, non-exportation. So the provincial government, which may refer to the Continental Congress, but it may also refer to the Committee of 99, they sent a delegation to the backcountry to make peace. And this peace was attained by the Treaty of 96, where the backcountry agreed that they would remain neutral in the fight with Great Britain. However, later the Provincial Congress, which may refer to the Committee of 99, and it also may refer to the national government, sent a force to defeat the Loyalist militia and silence opposition from the backcountry. Here is some information on the Treaty of 96, which was where the backcountry agreed they would remain neutral in the fight with Great Britain. There is a historic site there in South Carolina. There was a rudimentary fort here. 96 is right here. As you can see, South Carolina had new districts in 1769, which included the following: Orangeburg, Camden, Cheraw, Georgetown. You can see we're here. And Little River and Kingston are actually on the map then, so those are some pretty old settlements here. But here's 96 in the back country, more towards the up country, where that treaty was signed, where the back country agreed to remain neutral. Here is some more of 96, where that treaty was and where the battle took place between those backcountry loyalists and the provincial government troops, most likely the Continental Congress. When it was decided that the Provincial Congress needed to send a force to defeat this loyalist militia, they sent right here, you probably know who this is, the Quaker commander, Nathaniel Greene, to lead the siege of 96, where the Patriots were fighting that loyalist militia after the loyalists in the backcountry broke the Treaty of 96. Well, there were many topics covered today, mostly about the government. There are a few general things that needed to be known. One, that the de facto government wasn't the General Committee of 99. This was the government in fact in the region, not the royal governor. Two, the continued trend of any representational assembly being disproportionately from the low country. And also that South Carolina formed this independent government prior to the Revolution. Last, of course, was a totally new idea about the Treaty of '96, where the backcountry agreed they would remain neutral in the fight with Great Britain. This completes the lesson for today. Thank you for listening. I hope you did well.